You wake up and you don't know what you want. You look at your life and nothing makes sense. Your job feels wrong, but you don't know what's right. Your relationships feel off, but you can't articulate why. You're making decisions, but none of them feel clear. Everything is foggy, uncertain, confusing, and the worst part? You don't even know what questions to ask to make it less confusing. You're scrolling through advice online. Follow your passion. Trust your gut. Listen to your intuition. But your gut isn't saying anything clear. Your intuition feels broken. Your passion? You're not even sure you have one anymore. So you're stuck, paralyzed, waiting for clarity to arrive like some magical revelation that makes everything suddenly make sense. But it's not coming, and you're starting to wonder if it ever will. Here's what nobody tells you about clarity. It doesn't arrive. You don't find it. You don't wait for it, you create it. Clarity isn't a moment of divine inspiration that strikes you while you're lying in bed. It's a process, it's a practice. It's something you build step by step, through action and reflection. And the reason everything feels confusing right now isn't because you're broken or lost. It's because you're trying to think your way to clarity instead of acting your way there. Let me explain what's actually happening. When everything feels confusing, your instinct is to stop, to freeze, to wait until things become clear before you make a move. You tell yourself, once I figure out what I want, then I'll act. Once I know the right path, then I'll start walking. But that's backwards. Clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. You can't think your way out of confusion. You have to act your way out. Here's why. Confusion isn't a lack of information. It's a lack of contrast. You can't know what you want until you experience what you don't want. You can't know what feels right until you try what feels wrong. You can't know which direction to go until you start moving and notice how it feels. Clarity comes from feedback, and you can't get feedback sitting still. Think about it this way. You're standing at a crossroads, multiple paths in front of you, and you're trying to figure out which one is right by staring at them, analyzing them, imagining where they might lead. But you can't see around the bend. You can't know what's down each path until you walk it. So you're paralyzed, waiting for certainty before you choose. But certainty doesn't exist at the beginning. It only exists in hindsight. The way forward isn't to wait until you're sure. It's to pick a direction and start walking. Not randomly, not recklessly, but intentionally. You walk one path for a bit. You pay attention to how it feels. Does your body relax or tense? Does your energy increase or drain? Do you feel more like yourself or less? That's your feedback. That's how you create clarity. Not by thinking about the path, but by walking it and noticing. Let me tell you about David. He was 31 and felt completely lost. He had a stable job in finance that paid well but drained him. He didn't hate it, but he didn't love it. And he kept thinking, maybe I should do something else. But what? I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know what I want. So he did nothing. He stayed in the job, waiting for clarity to hit him. Years passed. The confusion didn't lift. If anything, it got worse. Because the longer he waited, the more pressure he put on finding the perfect answer. He felt like he needed to be absolutely certain before making a move. But that certainty never came. Until one day, his friend said something that changed everything. You don't need to know what you want to do for the rest of your life. You just need to know what you want to try next. That shift was everything. David didn't need to figure out his entire future. He just needed to take one small step in a direction that felt interesting. So he started volunteering on weekends for a nonprofit he cared about. Not because he knew it was his calling, but because it felt worth exploring. And within 3 months, something became clear. He loved the work, not the tasks themselves necessarily, but the values behind it, the mission, the impact. That was his feedback. He didn't quit his job immediately. He didn't make some dramatic, life-altering decision. He just kept volunteering, and the contrast became clearer. Finance felt like obligation. The nonprofit felt like alignment. That clarity didn't come from thinking about what he wanted. It came from doing 2 different things and noticing which one made him feel more alive. Eventually, he made the shift. Not because he had it all figured out, but because he had enough clarity to take the next step. And each step gave him more clarity for the one after that. That's how it works. Clarity isn't a destination you arrive at before you start moving. It's a byproduct of moving. Here's what creating clarity actually looks like. First, you stop waiting for the perfect answer and start experimenting with small actions. You don't need to know what you want to do with your entire life. You just need to identify one thing that feels worth exploring. Something that creates a small pull. Not a scream, just a whisper. And you try it. Not forever. Just for a defined period. 3 months? 6 months. Long enough to get real feedback. Second, you pay attention to your body, not just your thoughts. Your mind will overthink everything. It'll create pros and cons lists that go nowhere. But your body knows. When you're doing something aligned, your body relaxes. Your energy increases. You feel more present. When you're doing something misaligned, your body tenses. Your energy drains. You feel like you're performing. That's your compass, not your thoughts, your body. Third, you create contrast. This is critical. You can't know what you want if you only ever do one thing. You need comparison. So if you're confused about your career, try 2 different types of work, even in small ways. Volunteer in different spaces. Take on different projects. If you're confused about relationships, notice how you feel with different people. Not to play games, but to create data. Clarity comes from contrast. Fourth, you name what you notice. This is where most people fail. They try things, but they don't process them. They move, but they don't reflect. So the feedback doesn't register. After you try something, ask yourself, did that feel aligned or misaligned? Did I feel energized or drained? More myself or less myself? Write it down. Name it. Because clarity lives in the articulation. If you can't name what you're noticing, you can't use it to guide you. Fifth, you iterate. You don't try one thing and decide your entire future based on it. You try something. You notice, you adjust. You try something else. Each iteration brings more clarity. Not because you're getting closer to some predetermined answer, but because you're learning about yourself through action. And that self-knowledge is clarity. Here's what most people get wrong. They think clarity is about finding the right answer out there somewhere. The right career, the right relationship, the right city. But clarity isn't about finding the right thing. It's about becoming clear on who you are and what aligns with that. And you can't discover who you are by thinking about it. You discover it by living, by trying things, by noticing what resonates and what doesn't. You're not confused because you're broken. You're confused because you're in transition, because you're outgrowing old versions of yourself and you haven't yet stepped into new ones. That in-between space is inherently unclear, and no amount of thinking will rush you through it. But action will, movement will, experimentation will. So here's what you do starting today. Stop waiting for clarity to arrive. Stop thinking your life has to make perfect sense before you make a move. Pick one thing that feels even remotely interesting and try it for 3 months. Not as a life commitment, as an experiment. Pay attention to how it feels. Notice if your energy increases or decreases. Notice if you feel more yourself or less. Then try something else. Create contrast. Compare, notice patterns. What consistently drains you? What consistently energizes you? What makes you lose track of time? What makes you feel like you're forcing it? Those patterns are your clarity, not the thoughts about what you should want, but the felt experience of what actually resonates. And be patient with yourself. Clarity doesn't happen overnight. It's built through repetition, through trying and noticing and trying again, through small, courageous steps into the unknown, through being willing to not know while you're figuring it out. That willingness to be in the confusion without rushing out of it, that's where clarity actually grows. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a master plan. You don't need certainty. You just need to be willing to take one step in a direction that feels worth exploring. And then another, and another. Each step creates data. Each action generates feedback. And slowly, clarity emerges. Not because you found the answer, but because you became clear on who you are through the process of living. So stop waiting, start moving. Even if it's messy, even if you're not sure. Clarity isn't found in stillness. It's created in motion. You don't think your way to a clear life. You live your way there. One small experiment at a time. One honest reflection at a time. One courageous step at a time. That's how you create clarity. Not by waiting for it, but by building it through action, through attention, through the willingness to try, notice, and try again. That's how confusion becomes clarity. Not through revelation, through practice.